right, so welcome. And of course, today our focus on the voter registration exercise. And this is an exercise that some 35 days. The main purpose was to cure what was described as a bloated register. The Electoral Commission reports that some 16.6 million Ghanaians have now registered and indeed gotten their names onto the country's electoral roll. But can we say we have a more credible voters register today? We'll be exploring this question and more on today's edition. Welcome to From the Diaspora. My name is Kwakye Afreh-Nuamah, and as we do always on this show, we pick the thoughts, the views of Ghanaians in the diaspora on sensitive, topical national issues. Joining me today, George Odoom is a member of the MPP UK Luton Chapter Communications team. Also, Dr. Sharif Mahamud. Khalid is an assistant professor of accounting and management at the University of Sheffield Management School. He's also a member of the National Democratic Congress. And joining us later on is today from the show in the United States, from the United States of America, will be John Taden, a doctoral candidate at the School of Economics, Political and Policy Sciences at the University of Texas at Dallas. Grateful for your time here, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so I'll first of all want to pick your initial comments on what your observations of the process was and has been in the last 35 days, marked by a lot of drama and of course it's generated a lot of headlines in the past couple of days. In a minute and a half, I'll start with you, Dr. Khalid.
Well, what interests me so much, or what seemed to surprise me, is that we as a country have been stagnated as far as our developmental progress when it comes to issues of elections. I don't know what it is in getting on an electoral roll that it tends to become a do or die affair. That's not so much reflective of a progressive society, right? We talk about universal adult suffrage every day and every now and again. Even most of us living in the diaspora in countries, or probably the UK, aspire to be Commonwealth citizens, are allowed to vote, and we don't queue up to vote. It's just by using our addressing system to do all of this. So if the country in the last 4 years has been on a tangent to revolutionizing addressing systems, to having national identification cards, to having different or parallel registration and biometric data being collected, and there have not been any synchronization of this feature to get people on an electoral roll, then I think it is quite unfortunate that we'll still have to go through these struggles every now and again or every 4 years to get these things fixed.
Well, George, Dr. Sharif thinks that this is a simple exercise of getting names onto the electoral roll and it shouldn't be a do and die affair. I don't know what your own thoughts are, quickly, initial on the exercise.
Yeah. When it comes to voters registration, this is not the first time that we're doing a voters registration. But you and I can bear witness to the fact that whenever we're doing voters registration, there's a bit of tension. Reason being that all the political parties obviously will want to see to it that things are done in the right way. So we might have our own opinion as to how things should go. The other political parties might also have their own opinion. But at the end of the day, the decision to compile a new register has everything to do with the EC. When the new EC came in, she took a decision that the current register wasn't credible enough. So she came out with the decision to do a new register. And it's something that, if I may say, that it saddens my heart, that the NDC had to take this matter to the Supreme Court to try and cause this sort of delay. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court ruled in the favor of the EC. And then if you look at the registration exercise, apart from a few things that happened, which is not something to write home about, everything else went on smoothly because it was done within a period of 35 days. Like you rightly said, it's not easy to capture people because the situation we're in now because of COVID-19. So for me, I would say that the EC has done an excellent job an impressive one. So it's something that we need to really acknowledge. And like what my brother said, when it comes to registration in the Western world, things are done without any tension. But I think that it would take education and it takes time for people to know that when it comes to registration, it's not a do or die affair. But the only reason why it tends to be a do or die affair is because some political parties feel that like they have to try and get people from outside Ghana to register. So it always brings this tension. That is why you have this issue about 16 people being arrested that were brought in all the way from Cote d'Ivoire to come and register. You see, so it's not a do or die affair. So I want to say this to all the Ghanaians listening, that when it comes to registration, it's a simple affair. So as Ghanaians, we should all cooperate and support this exercise, and it's something that Ghanaians have done. It's only left with 2 days for the EC to do a mop-up exercise. So we are hoping that today and tomorrow the mop-up exercise will go on smoothly.
And let me come back to you, Dr. Sharif.
Yeah.
The numbers as the Electoral Commission given in terms of the data and number of Ghanaians who have registered and participated in this process, 16.6 million. And many thought that due to the concerns and mainly raised by the NDC about the documents that would be accepted by the Electoral Commission, the passport and national ID, and also because of the times that we're in, it was going to be very difficult to actually see a huge turnout. Hello, Doc.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean, many are surprised though.
Well, I mean, the point is, there's a lot of things that go into, especially participation in an election, and one of the process is registration. You would see that there have been a lot of interesting scenarios and stories that could probably whip and whet the appetite of people who were rather not interested in going out to vote, to go out to register and vote. So I think that a build up to all of this created a few tensions. And, you know, there's been a lot of misinformation in the system that probably this new register coming out and giving the numbers would tend to dispel. For instance, you talk about K2 South that has been on the horizon for a very long time now, and the numbers given, you look at the numbers of 4 years ago and the numbers today, what difference does it make? All right, plus or minus statistically 5% or whatever it is that the EC or whatever margin of error it is that they want to use. Then you go back to a point of also credibility. What does the EC mean by a credible register? I think it's within these definitive lens of a credible register, right, which register is bloated and who was basing in foreigners whatsoever, that there tend to be tensions around this. So apart from, and I think that this new register is really going to reveal all of the, you know, the cooked stories that came up as far as these things were concerned. But as I said, the tensions surrounding the process and the buildup and insistence of the government and the EC, right, stood to whip sentiments and actually whet the appetite of people to say, look, I was not going to vote, but I'm going to go out there and do it. I'll brave COVID, regardless of whatever the situation is, because the government is taking us for granted.
And I remember when after the NDC was not so successful in court, it lost that court case, that the youth organizer was one of the top party officials who said, listen, go out there and register. Use this as an opportunity to show your or demonstrate your anger and vote against the incumbent government, that's the MPP government. Yeah. You think this had any impact on the overall numbers?
Well, I did not listen to the youth organizer at the time, but what I do know and what I follow, regardless of party affiliation, people are angered. People who otherwise not brave COVID to go out to register and vote are going out to register. I can't say for now who they will be voting for or who they'll be channeling their anger against as far as this process is concerned. But I think December 7th would determine that.
Let me say that we've been joined by John Taden. He's a doctoral candidate at the School of Economics, Political and Policy Sciences at the University.
Because I mean, the interesting thing is you have an EC that says there's a bloated register, we need to clean it. We spend millions, brave COVID, queue up, and now a 16-member delegation
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, and whether we need to.
It's quite interesting. What system are we creating?
whether you think that will be necessary, because that 16-member team has a clear mandate. But John, you did just join us. Thank you for your time. So I'll pick your initial thoughts as well on what your observations have been throughout this a little over a month process. Yeah, John, I think your audio is off.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, for my thoughts or initial thoughts on the process, I think it largely sort of, turned out more people than expected, and also there was the expectation, given how controversial it was at the beginning. I expected it to be as really combative as it turned out to be in some places, as we saw in Bandai and some of the actual towns in the Volta region. I expected to see that. I expected to see that sort of commotion, and I think it wasn't surprising because from the beginning, everybody sort of had an idea of what was really the intention of the government here. And even if they didn't, even if that wasn't an official intention or the official intention of the government, we heard from some of the statements by some of the senior members of the governing MPP party, someone like Katie Hammond, when he talked about, what the soldiers were really at the border for, I think sort of brought up some statements that indicated that the process was going to be very contentious, and it lived up to its billing. And some of it, frankly, were not very good for the government's image, but largely it turned out more people than expected. And we would probably be looking into whether, it corroborates with the government's initial assertions of a bloated register and stuff like that.
All right, John, let me come to you on the same question I asked Dr. Sharif about the two narratives here, looking at what the outcome has been, looking at what the turnout has been. The narrative that seems to go more in line with what the NDC had pushed for, that people should come out in their numbers, and also the fact that during this particular period, it was a major risk that people were participating in that process. But the MPP has also said that, listen, the numbers that we have seen is simply indicative of the fact that the argument that the NDC brought forth initially, that the requirement that you needed to have a passport, a Ghanaian passport, or a national ID, or in the absence of the two, someone would have to, vouch for you, would lead to a situation where many people would be disenfranchised. Many eligible voters will be disenfranchised. Do you think that the numbers tell anything so far as vindicating what your initial position was?
Okay.
This is
from
that was to George, actually. I'll come to you, John.
Yeah. Okay. From the initial numbers that we are getting, with the EC has made it available to all, I can say that the EC was right to compile this new register, because like you rightly said, the NDC made a whole lot of issues. They even took it to court. They said that it was going to prevent people from registering because not a lot of people have got passport or have got the Ghana card. But that is why the EC came with a third option. And this third option has really worked out well for people. So a lot of people have been able to register. So in effect, what I can say is that the EC has done a great job. And then Ghanaians were also eager to register to prove a point that they want to protect their right to vote, irrespective of whatever was required of them. They queued up, they did everything. The political parties also did their bit. They helped in organizing people to go and register. So I think that it is something that we can all be proud of as Ghanaians, that irrespective of this COVID-19 situation, we are so interested in our political dispensation. We're so interested in the fact that we have the right to vote. Not everybody has got the right to vote. There are some countries that people can't choose their leaders. But we are quite fortunate that we can choose our own leaders. So people will always queue up to register to be given the chance to vote. So this is something that we can all learn a lesson from. So this goes to all the political parties, that we shouldn't really make this issue like a do or die affair. We should make it like a normal thing that people want to do. Because to be honest with you, when I looked at the initial figures that were coming out, I was a bit worried because 3 weeks into it, the figures were not really encouraging. But when it was getting to the latter part, a lot of people trooped in and got registered. So if you look at the figure now, 16,663,699 that has been able to register. So if we are to compare, I want to make a comparison here. In 2019, the register had a total of 16,845,420 voters, according to the EC. So if you look at it, we are close to the number that we were in 2019. We are close to the number. But one thing that I want to ask a question is, why did we not get more than 17 million or 17.5 or 18 million? I'm going to answer you that question myself, because that comes to confirm the suspicion of the EC that there was an issue with the voters registration. Because now look at the number. The number is not even
something the mop-up exercise which ends on Sunday could,
Yeah, but even if the mop-up exercise, we're able to get even close to what we had before. That raises a question mark as well. Because people have turned 18. A lot of youth, they have turned 18 this year, and they all registered. So if they registered, and we are still having around the same figure before the registration, meaning for me personally, I think that the EC has done a great job by preventing people that perhaps that are not Ghanaians to register. They were not able to be successful in all situations, because we've had instances whereby other people have been able to register and they are not Ghanaians. And then the EC has also given a figure of 796,493 people that did multiple registration. So they are on a multiple registration assessment list, where they have set up a committee, adjudication committee, to manually determine cases of duplicated voter registration. So we still have to wait, because the figure might even go down, because there are about nearly 800,000 people that did multiple registration. So we still have to wait. If we get the whole figure, then we can really do a holistic debate on this matter.
Okay, it's interesting you're mentioning figures, and Dr. Khalid, I'll come to you. I'll pick your thoughts on that as well. But John, I know you have some graphs you want to share with us.
Yes, actually, to my colleague George, I beg to differ. The figures do not actually confirm the Electoral Commission's initial position that the register was bloated. And I'll show you some figures here. So, are you guys seeing my screen? Let me see. I need to share my screen.
Okay, while you try to do that, Dr. Khalid, yeah. John thinks that the fact that we are seeing these figures shows actually vindicates the MPP's position all along.
Yeah, I think his screen is up. Do you want to deal with that? So we don't lose that again, if that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so here is sort of a distribution of the voters registers that we've been using for elections since 1992. Now, when you look at it, you realize that the only time when we had a reduction in the voters register was in 2004, where there was, in fact, a new voters register that was done in 2004 by the MPP government at then, and the same argument was made by the Electoral Commission that the register was bloated. And so when they went in for a new register, and if you remember, that was the first time we had our photos put on ID cards and stuff. What we are seeing here is that, in fact, it did confirm suspicions that the voters register was bloated, because at the end of the exercise, the new number that we got on the register, 10.3 million, was lower than the register that was used in 2000, which is 10.6 million. Now, take this trend all the way up until the 2016 register, and then assume that the trend continued linearly. What we're supposed to be having then in 2015 when you project is, I'll pull it up here, 16.6 million people on the register. Now, that is a ballpark. And as you can see with the confidence bands, that is the gray shaded area. Any figure within this confidence band fails to corroborate the Electoral Commission's assertion. So we have to have a figure out of the confidence bands as we did for 2004 in the previous graph. And what the Electoral Commission is having right now is in fact a little higher than 16.6 million. And at the end, when they're done, we could have a figure even significantly higher. For them to actually prove that the register was bloated, they have to have a figure lower than this red line, 15.3 million people. And that isn't happening. And in fact, even though my brother George is saying that they're having a figure lower than the 2019 figure, in fact, we're having issues of a pandemic that is scaring people to step out of their homes and do a lot of things. And so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of like debate and argument, but I'll just present the facts and show you that the evidence, in fact, don't support the theory that the register was bloated at all. That is my submission from here.
Okay.
Okay. You know what you just said? Yeah. Let me just come in briefly. Yeah. Just a quick one. Yeah. If you look at the figure that is coming out now, it is something that perhaps we all have to have a quick look at it. Yeah. Region by region, you realize that there are some regions that the figures have gone down. When you go to the voter region, the figure has gone down compared to the one that we had before. So if the last time we did the registration, the figure we have today is less than what we got previously when we did the registration. So that is saying something to us, because due to the fact that people were more.
Do you mind to share that with us?
Hold on 1 minute. No, it's not only a voter region. When you go to Asante region,
I'll share again when it's necessary.
Yeah, when you go to Asante region, there was a decrease of 0.1%. Mm-hmm. And then when you go to Greater Accra, there was also some, I think, less than 1% decrease in the number of people that got registered now. Yeah, so that is saying something to us. Yeah. It is only Central region and then a few other regions that were able to maintain or go a bit higher than the number that was registered previously. So this is saying something to us. Why are figures going down in some regions? So it's something that gives us food for thought. Why is this happening? Because there is the issue about voter regions.
There are theories to explain that. Not to cut you short, but I actually do have some data to show you if you're interested in why those figures might be going up. But let's take a look here, and I'll share my screen one more time. So we've had a voters register redone before by the MPP in 2004, and then by the NDC in 2012. Now, is my screen
2010 or 2010?
Screen is
2012 elections.
Yeah, 2012. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you know, this is how the register actually looks, right? And so here in 2004, when the MPP actually conducted a new voters register, it led to a fewer number of people on the register, and the NDC lost. And so there were questions about, wait, did they actually target NDC constituencies and cause a reduction? I can't say, but there are two theories that we can talk about here. The Electoral Commission, for starters, is not immune to political influence, and
I think that you're not being fair to the EC if you say.
Actually, I'll show you.
Let's make a submission.
So when that register was done in 2004, there was a general reduction throughout the country in the number of registered voters per region, except in the Greater Accra region. So as you can see, in Greater Accra, the figure went up by 13.7 people. It just so happened coincidentally, I don't know, but that voter region suffered the worst reduction in the number of voters in 2004 by 16.6%. However, when the NDC took back over and they conducted a new register, which was in, here, let me find out.
2012?
2012. What we see is there was a general increase for each region. It just so happened that the regions that voted for the MPP in the previous elections, which was the Ashanti region and the Eastern region, turned out to be among the 3 lowest regions that experienced an increase in the voters register. So one reason or one theory is that the Electoral Commission is not immune to political influence. And so when parties are in power, they take over and they do things to favor themselves. But the second theory is that there is sort of an incumbency advantage where when the Electoral Commission is conducting a new register, because you are the incumbent party, you have the resources to turn out or mobilize people in your strongholds or your ward bank of voters to turn out and register. And the parties that are in opposition don't have much resources to turn out people in their constituencies. And so they end up having fewer people registered. That's the second theory. And we haven't tested these theories, but what I just want you to know is that there are in fact explanations for these, and it's not necessarily the case that any of these things vindicates the Electoral Commission's initial position.
Okay, I'll come to the big question of whether we have a more credible register now. But to an issue that you raised earlier, Dr. Sharif, you talked about the fact that the Electoral Commission has now inaugurated, and that was 2 days ago, a 60-member committee to clean up the new voters register. You seem to have issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, we spend millions to build a credible register. And one of the arguments that the EC put forward to the people of Ghana, for that matter, Parliament, right, was that, we're coming in with sophisticated machines that are going to have biometric features that would capture all of this data within a tight data collective system to avoid multiple registration. So if post that event, you are putting a 16-member delegation to pretend over millions of people that are registered to weed out, I think that's a bit ridiculous.
Well,
right?
this
again,
like,
yeah, okay, carry on.
This seems like a double checking mechanism to ensure
double checking, yes.
It is a manual checking mechanism.
So hold on.
Manual checking
what the EC has said is that this 16-member team is required to manually determine the eligibility of persons who apply for multiple registration through the deduplication process.
Yeah.
Would that not be necessary still?
I'm not saying, but if you claim to have brought a sophisticated system to cure all of these problems, right? So do you think 16-member, we're speaking from a very scientific perspective, right? What expertise are they bringing onto that committee in the first place to manually weed out multiple registrants? Is that not incredible? Right, what's the composition of the team? What's the terms of reference of the team? And how are they manually?
I know the team is led by the one of the deputy commissioners. In fact, a man who has so much knowledge when it comes to the Electoral Commission's activities, Mr. Taden. But of course, other members of the committee include representation from the political parties and the EC's own technical team and all that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. How justified is that even now? So does that not shoot the entire sophistication argument they were making?
Is your reservation related to the composition of the team?
Yeah, one, the composition of the team.
Or the setting up of the team in the first place?
Yeah, one, the composition of the team. Two, the setting up of the team, because you've gone heaven and earth and made us to understand that you're bringing a more sophisticated and superior biometric capturing system, right, that would prevent it from being bloated. So to now bring 16 members. So what it means is that we would have just gone through with an old system, not spend millions, and bring 16 people to weed it off.
Would that have amounted to the same results? John, do you agree?
What I'm thinking is that, in fact, we are not experiencing sort of the the performance that we expected to see from the amount of money that is being spent on the new register. I think that what the Electoral Commission made us believe that we had old equipment or equipment that were no longer performing, and we're going to upgrade and bring in high-tech stuff that were going to cost us $100 to $200 million. We're supposed to sort of take away some of these problems that we are currently having. And so I don't feel like they are being vindicated by this.
Okay, George.
Okay. You know that I don't understand this argument, because if a register has been compiled and then there were issues that obviously the system flagged it out that there's multiple registration. Obviously, the EC has to have a relook about, it has to edit the register, because even if you compile a new register, you still have to go through and make sure that everything is okay. Because there were instances where people registered that there were some people from both political parties, the largest political party, the NDC and NPP, that had issues with those people. The EC has given a figure of over 30,000 people that people had to question their eligibility to be able to register. So all these issues, the EC has to look into it. And then the system has also been able to pick up. That's how we have a figure. The system has picked up over 797,493 people that have done multiple registration. That shows us that the system is working. It has been able to identify people that have done multiple registration. So what this 60-member team, what they are going to do is to make sure that everything was right. That is why it's got political parties members as part of the committee. So they are going to go through the whole register manually to make sure that whatever the names that they are going to take out is not going to affect anybody, but it's the right people that they are taking their names out. Because the EC doesn't want a situation where she will be blamed that she has disenfranchised some people. So she has to make sure that the right thing is done. That is why when you look at this 60-member committee, it comprises of members from both political parties. And I believe the people that are on the board are experienced. So I believe we should give them the benefit of the doubt and wait for them to finish with whatever they are going to do, because they are being taxed to do a serious work for Mother Ghana. So I believe we should encourage them and wait for the results before we can give our own reasons as to if it was needed or not. Because I believe what my brother is saying from the NDC, doctor, what you are saying, I can understand, because you made reference to the fact that we had an old register. So perhaps they could have appointed people to also look into it. But don't forget that we had to also register people that are 10, 18. Because if you listen to Dr. Bosman yesterday, he made a comment that if we had used the old register, then perhaps we would have registered more than 19 million people. Because as of now, the registration was close to 17 million already. And there are people that have 10, 18. So if we were to add them to the old register, the prediction was we're going to get over 90 million. But if we compare that to figures from the Ghana Statistical Service, it is written that figures from Ghana Statistical Service says that for the population census that they did, we had about 17,624,686 people, which are 18 or above, which represent 56.9% of the population of Ghana, which is estimated at 31 million. So if they are telling us that people that are 17 and above, 18 and above, are 17.6, then something would have been wrong for us to have over 19 million on the register. If we had used the old one, we would have gotten something over 18 million.
Dr. Sharif,
this is a very interesting comparison he's making, right? It's apple and oranges, right? Which census figures is he using from 10 years ago? We couldn't conduct a census before we have these elections. So to want to make any comparison, if actually the EC is doing that, that's
no. The Ghana Statistical Service made an estimate. It's on based on the previous census. They made an estimate. They look at the population now, because we haven't done a current one.
Yeah, so
they made a prediction. It's like a prediction.
Statistically, estimates are just a guide. They are not absolute values. So to use that estimation to make a concrete decision as important as a national voter register is incredible.
But George makes an interesting point as well.
Yeah.
Quick reaction from you on that. The fundamental point that you have some duplicated data on
there is always duplication in every.
And I'm talking about this relative to your earlier comment about the need to set up this 16-member team, to have a second look at it. If this is, and of course, with every registration exercise, you have this, you have duplicated names and all. So this team is to ensure that, and as I mentioned earlier, after the duplication process, they will manually determine the eligibility of persons who have been flagged for multiple registration.
Well, and here's what I'm saying: year after year, or like election year after election year, when we had these registration or this day processes ongoing, there have been multiple registrations, right? At IPAC level, they've been dealt with. So with the superior system they've brought in place, if that has not succeeded in preventing this, what it means is that their own argument could not stand on its own feet. Plus, there's no value for money in whatever investments they've gone into, as far as this new register is concerned. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, let's move to the next issue related to this. And my question is, do we have a more credible register now after what we've seen in the last 35 days? Would you say so? We've seen incidents, we've seen and heard reports about incidents of violence, intimidation, even people being prevented from participating, or they were challenged based on whether or not they could speak Twi, whether or not they understand their names. Even a journalist in Ghana I know so well, Atiawen Mbila with the EIB group, she says she was challenged. Well, she's been able to do it now. Can we say, in view of all that we've seen in the last couple of days, that we have a more credible register? George.
Okay. Before we can boldly say that we have a credible register, we have to wait for the final figures. We have to wait for the 16-member committee, what they are going to do. Because if they are not able to resolve this issue, then we can't say that we have a credible register. So we have to wait, because we have to give EC the chance to finish. But every final touches.
Understood. Every step of this process counts. Every step of the process of compiling the register does count. And I did state some incidents. Ahead of the final tabulation and computation of those figures, what picture are you getting?
Okay, for what we've got so far, what I would say is that I believe that the final figures is something that we still have to wait for. Because for me, personally, I have issue with the registration. I'm going to be honest with you. Because if 66 people have been arrested that are from Côte d'Ivoire, that they came in and they were able to register, then you can't boldly say that we have a credible register. We have to wait and see what happens with all the editing that's going to go on. Because these people were not Ghanaians, but they were able to get on the register. So that means we still have a problem. As Ghanaians, we still have a problem. So it's something that the political parties have to come together and think of the national interest. What can we do to salvage the situation? Because the border towns were all closed, yet people were able to come into Ghana and register. Because I'll give you a perfect example. The 16 people that were arrested, some people had like Kwakye, strange names, you see? And then they were still able to register. So what about the ones that we don't know? Do you get my argument? What about the ones that we don't know? So we still have to wait. That's what the EC has got a case to answer. For me personally, I think that the EC has got a case to answer. Because how come his own officials registered these people? Because if these people came from Côte d'Ivoire and look at the names they were given, Akosia Abna, like straight names, they should have challenged them and asked more questions. Because when they were arrested, they confessed and say, yeah, they are Ivorians. They are not Ghanaians. It's just one person that organized and brought them to Ghana. So perhaps the system that we put in place didn't work properly. Because that's why I believe that the EC officials at that particular registration center has got issues to answer. So for me, I'll wait for the final figures before I will come out with my own opinion as to whether this is a credible register or not. But for the time being, I strongly believe that we're going to have a credible register.
And Dr. Khalid, What picture are you getting?
I think insinuating that people have straight names, and for that matter, they are not Ghanaians, I think is unfair to anyone without being, and no individual citizen, right, within the soils of Ghana or without or across the Atlantic can determine the citizenship of the other, right? So I think that that's not really a very fair point to go with. But again,
I think you got me wrong. You get me wrong because you see, they born. Let me be honest. As Ghanaians, yeah. Let me be precise. Akan people, the names are given according to the day that you were born. So let's be specific. I was born on a Monday, so I'm called Kojo. You got what I mean? So if I'm called Kojo and my full name, I say Kojo Kwabena, Kojo Kweshi, there's something wrong.
But how is that the determination of one citizen? Sure.
No. That's what I'm saying, that they should have investigated, because from the report that we are getting.
Is that a determination of one citizenship?
Okay, you can go by language, because we have languages that we speak in Ghana. Because these people that came from Ivory, they couldn't speak any of the Ghanaian languages.
But George, how can language be a determination?
Be a determination of citizenship.
No. I'm not saying that language alone will be a determination.
But
I'm saying that it will be part of the process.
Language on its own,
all the variables.
Is that your point? That language on its own can be a determination of citizenship.
No. I'm saying that it can be part of the determination, because they should have inquired about their parents.
And what I'm saying is never been.
Because from the report that we got from UTV, yeah, some of them just wrote mother's name, Abena, no surname, father's name, Kwabena. You see, these are strange. You have to
my point is, all these variables, all this litany of variables you keep going on with are not a determination of one's citizenship. And that would be unfair to anyone.
But George, you do admit that, for example, there are Ghanaians who cannot speak any local language. I find that simply based on their socialization.
Okay, I find that quite strange, but it's possible, like you rightly said.
Yeah, so
because nowadays people,
it will be really problematic to want to determine the nationality of anyone.
Okay, can I come in with something? Let me come in with something. Yeah, I went to the Ghana High Commission in the UK. I needed a passport, emergency passport, because I had to travel to Ghana. When I went there, let me tell you how they were able to determine that if I was a Ghanaian or not. Because at that time, I've lost my passport. I didn't have my birth certificate. So I went in, and then they said they can't help me because I don't have birth certificate. So I spoke to someone, and the person said, you know what, we have to speak to the man in charge. So I went to the office to meet the one in charge. And do you know the questions he asked me? What school did you attend? You see, the school I attended in Ghana. My hometown. Questions that if you are not Ghanaian, you will find it very difficult, because it wasn't something that I was told in advance.
Okay, so let's make progress. I guess your point is made.
Again, that
verify if I was a Ghanaian or not.
That officer, whoever he is wrong in using that determination.
Okay.
Or that rubric to determine your
citizenship. I guess the point is
made. No. I had a copy of the passport that I lost, so he knew that I had a Ghanaian passport.
Okay, Dr. Sharif, to the question.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, I don't know what's the EC's working definition of a credible register. So far, they've not been able to tell us. Or you know something we don't know.
The EC said the previous register was bloated.
No, so the bloated, and what's bloating, or what's a bloated register? What are the parameters of a bloated register? Is it a register with X number proportionate to the population? What is it that the EC meant by bloated register? So you see that we're working in a vacuum with all the noise that was being made. So it was just by the figment of someone's imagination, we needed to have a register. And that's why I support his point about the independence of the Electoral Commission. So you just don't wake up with a discretion, right, and a support by a government of the day. I'm not only blaming the current government, it could happen to any government, and then think that we must have this process. More so when you needed a census, which we ignored because of COVID, but thought that we could register because of COVID. So you see all the contradictions that went into the decision-making process. But then again, can we talk about a credible register when you and I, who are citizens, like, born, bred Ghanaians, have Ghanaian blood flowing in us, not have ourselves on the register? Could that be deemed as credible?
Perhaps by reason of COVID.
right? Yeah. So could that also be deemed as a credible register?
Yeah, that's.
Now, when we talk about a credible register, we need to really understand what the EC means by a credible register.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to do with a lot of factors. They have to look at the population census of a particular area and the number of people that are over 18. And then look at the number of people that are also registered in that area.
So can you give us an example of a particular area and the figures with which the EC came out to say that this was it and it was not credible?
Okay, I'll be honest with you about something. I don't want to pick on any region, yeah? But there was
instances. It's an easy discussion.
There were instances, K to South, for instance. There were instances whereby some EC executives or members had issue with K to South. Because if you look at the number of people that were on the population census compared to the people that were registered, and the statistics that they got from the Ghana Statistical Service in relation to adults that were in that particular area, and then you look at the people that were registered, it was a mismatch.
No, so and looking at that statistic, right?
And not only that, there was an issue in Asante region as well.
You know,
there was an issue in Asante region as well.
But do you know,
so it wasn't only in Volta region.
No, I'm just giving an example. Do you know some of these areas we refer to that are border towns, right, have a very high migration rates?
Okay.
Immigration rates. Are all of these things looked at? So you can't just look at this and say that I want the figures to be thrown at us so we can have that discussion. The EC never came out with any of this.
Very well, John. I don't know if you have some more graphs to show us, so we conclude on this.
So actually, I have one graph to show, but I agree with Brother George that we need to wait to see the conclusion of this process to determine whether the register is credible, and I'll show you why. But as a digression here, in Ghana, we're not able to track actually sort of the internal migration and even the daily cross-border migrations that occur. And so that's why some of these things are not very clear to us. But I lived I'm from a border town in Ghana, Saboba, and it's on the border between Ghana and Togo. And over there, I can say from experience that the daytime population differs from the nighttime population. And here in the US, we're able to track that and we're able to see who's moving in and out on a daily basis. Why are they moving in and out? Who has a residence here? Who has a residence over there? In fact, many of the surrounding villages in Togo come into Saboba when they need medical services, even like labor. And so when a kid is born in a Ghanaian hospital, because the parents have moved into from across the border, by legal definition, they are Ghanaians. But even that, we also have a lot of Ghanaians in Saboba doing a lot of business, in fact, on a daily basis across the river in Togo. And these people pretty much have almost, in fact, most of their family members dead because of years of business and stuff. And those family members have ambiguous citizenship at some times, but others know definitively that they are Ghanaians, even though they live in Togo, and those who live in Ghana know definitively that they are Togolese, even though they live in Ghana. So our inability to track these things precisely makes it difficult to tell whether what we are getting is actually credible in terms of whether we are excluding people who are actually Ghanaians or we're including people who are not Ghanaians. That's the side point. But in fact, the other reason why we have to wait to see is that I'm looking at what this committee is going to do at the end of the day, how many names they take out of the register. And if they do, it's going to confirm a theory that I have here that I showed you guys initially. And I'll show you again. So every time the NPP conducts a voters register, when you look at or updates a voters register because they're an incumbent, which they did in 2004 and in 2008, we see here that we get figures that are lower than the expected distribution, which is the red line here. However, when the NDC updates the register in incumbency, each time the voters register is the value is higher than they expected. And so and if you can see, those are the figures up there in 1996, 2000, 2012, and 2016. So I'm curious to see what is going to happen in 2020 when the MPP is eventually done. Whether we get a value lower than the line or higher than the line, and that will actually confirm whether there is indeed a political motive for this. But I think that we should wait to see what happens.
Okay, I'll take your final thoughts on all this. 2 minutes each. I'll start with you, John.
So, my final thought here is just as a Ghanaian, objectively, looking at what is going on, is that Ghanaians should know that in fact, even if you are an NDC member, you should know that the Electoral Commission actually has a mandate to ensure that we have credible elections. And oftentimes it is important to wait and see what their evidence is to determine whether what they're doing is, in fact, a suspicious process or a legitimate process. And as it happened in 2004, we had a very contentious debate as to whether we should actually update the register. And at the end, the Electoral Commission proved everybody wrong by coming up with a figure that was really low, where there was a general reduction in the number of registered voters. In fact, they had argued that at that time that the voter register that we had, which was used for the 2000 elections, was based on the 1984 census. And so we needed a more recent data. And in fact, the 2000 elections, we had more than 3 million people not showing up to the polls. And so the Electoral Commission was like, where are these people? That implies that these are ghost names. And so they turned out to be white. And so in this process too, I'm not saying that we should have waited to see what comes out, because it's the taxpayers' money that is going into this. And so it's important for citizens to be very conscious about what is going on. But at the same time, if you're an MPP member, what you should know is that the Electoral Commission is not immune to political influence. And that even though you might find that your party, the Electoral Commission is doing this, in fact, your party might be influencing this for a political motive, which when they are out of power, the NDC would likely take over and try to do the same thing. And as we have seen, the issue of sacking and hiring new electoral commissioners is getting politicized in the last 10 years. And so the NDC is likely to do the same thing if they ever come into power.
One point you've made time and again is the fact that the Electoral Commission is not immune to political influence. But the question is, shouldn't it be immune to political influence? Your final thoughts, Sharif. We should be worried if that is indeed the case, that EC is not immune to political influence. We say time and again that this is an independent, supposed to be an independent election.
For me, I think that much as we might have our doubts about its independence whatsoever, the last time we had a change, the process and the mode or the Rambo style ejection that went into the Rambo style in codes, that went to the removal, because that's the first time we had an EC commissioner being removed, electoral commissioner being removed, right? And then a new one being appointed by the president. So you wonder what the real motive of that was. And I thought that that wasn't really a good sign for our democracy, right? As far as I'm concerned, regardless of political party, and I'm not, whether it's NDC, MPP, any party that could have done that, I would say that would not be a good sign as far as our democratic process and its progress and resilience is concerned. Because what has happened now is a precedent that has been set. Trust me, I can guarantee you that any government that comes in, you want to change that easy.
Something the NDC may be doing.
Yeah, so we much as we had our suspicions about that office, that singular action alone has entrenched and introduced a new political dimension to the office of the EC.
Every government will want to have every political party.
And I think that that's quite an unfortunate position to have. That suspicion was enough. Even Afreh-Nuamah, who served as the longest electoral commissioner, right? We had our own suspicions about him till he left office, right? How much more the manner in which we had one, suspended or fired and then brought a new one in. So I think that has really not augured well, and it hasn't sent the right signal. It's set a bad precedent. On the issue of credible register, the EC, per its function, is a multi-stakeholder institution because it deals with multiplicity of people, stakeholders, political parties, civil society groups, and the likes of that. So when it turns to operationalize issues, such as a bloated register, right, such as a credible register, it should just not be done in empty words, but it should have a working definition that would come to the table for discussion and a concrete, how shall I say, variables mapped up to that definition and with agreements to it that this is what it is. To this day, we're all just speaking in a vacuum as to what a bloated register stands for and what that is. And again, as a nation, you don't create, because elections, in our part of the world, we have made elections a secrecy and we've made it a source of livelihood rather than a source of development or progress of our society. So livelihoods or individual livelihoods are dependent on an electoral process. So we tend to fight, blood for that, right? Which makes the process very murky and not quite interesting. So I think that also, so moving forward to do some of these things, the institutional actions, or for that matter, processes that ought to go in place to get these things. For instance, a census, we shouldn't have avoided a census, because if we had an excuse of COVID not to have a census and we are making projections, yet we were able to have with the registration process, I think that again, it intensifies that suspicion of why we are really having this.
Okay.
So I think that, but by and large, until the figures are out, none of us can really project to say that this is what it is. But I don't know what a credible register is or what a bloated register is. So I'll wait for that to happen.
All right. Have the final word on this, George.
Okay. I strongly believe that the EC has done a great job, because imagine 35 days within this period of COVID-19. So I would like to take this opportunity to really say that as Ghanaians, we should really appreciate what the EC and its staff they have been able to achieve within this short period. And also, I believe that we have to give the EC the benefit of the doubt until we actually see the final figures, so that we can actually make any issue as to whether it is a credible one or it's not a credible register. But when it comes to what my brother just said in relation to the fact that an EC chairman was removed and then another one was appointed, he shouldn't forget that we follow due process. So it's something that he has to remember. We follow due process, you see, in removing the EC, because the EC had issue to answer. He had a case to answer. Had it not been that she had a case to answer, our party couldn't have done nothing. Just as when we came to power in 2000.
Which court passed
2000, when we won, when we won election, after...
Which law of court, which court passed the EC guilty of what you were talking?
We'll have to be rounding up.
Okay, sorry, let me finish by saying, because I know...
Including 30 seconds for me.
Okay, what I want to say is that the EC has done a great job. So I'm encouraging all Ghanaians to support the EC and to also be ready for the election in December 7th and to vote for Nana, 4 more for Nana. That's what I'm encouraging all of you. Vote for Nana for the continuous implementation of free SHS and all the massive things that we are going to do for you in the next 4 years.
Okay,
because, I will say this in tree for the benefit of those that understand tree.
On that note, I think you are now
Mahamud.
I'm sure
you he can't come back. So he has to know that he's just wasting his time. So I just want to say to Ghanaians that you don't change a winning team.
I'm sure Dr. Sharif would have an opposing view, but grateful for your
time. No, he doesn't. My brother, if you ask him, he knows that they made a mistake by bringing Mahamud. He's not going to say it okay, but he can speak in private.
Ghanaians are going to determine that comes December 7th.
George Odoom is a member of the MPP Luton chapter communications team here in the United Kingdom. Also, Dr. Sharif Mahamud Khalid is an assistant professor of accounting and management at the University of Sheffield Management School. He's also a member of the NDC, and also joining us, you heard from him earlier, John Taden, a doctoral candidate at the School of Economics, Political and Policy Sciences at the University of Texas at Dallas in the United States of America. Grateful for your time. My name is Kwakye Afreh-Nuamah. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our page on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. The pages from the diaspora. Grateful for your time, yeah, gentlemen. We'll be back again next week. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
Thank
you. You too.